Good morning, class. Today I will inform you about Murphy's Law. Now, Murphy's Law states that whatever that can go wrong will go wrong. Now, I will explain this in more details, but before that, I have to tell you that the listener's discretion is advised. It's because if I explain more and more about this and give you examples, you could maybe relate it to your life, maybe even change your decision or alter your kind of point of view, because you may think this will apply to you. Now I will start my speech with first explaining exactly what is whatever that can go wrong will go wrong means. Then I will tell you about Edward Murphy, the legend who came up with this law. And then I will tell you about the modern interpretations and how it's connected to our lives. Now I decided to tell you about Edward Murphy after explaining what does Murphy's law means, because you need to understand what does this law exactly means, so you can relate it to Edward Murphy's life. Now, whatever can go wrong will go wrong. I'll keep repeating this so you can kind of sink it in. It's like a quote. You could just read it anywhere and then just pass it by, like I don't know, a quick glance and just pass it by like nothing, like a joke or a quote that you read somewhere. You won't even remember it until someone reminds you or tell you about it. Then you're like, yeah, okay, there is that law. But again, but it's much deeper than this. I will give you examples and tell you how it's connected to your life, so you can actually feel how it's connected to you. Now I'll give you an example. Imagine you're studying for an exam, typical situation in US. Now, you study and you get to a question and you don't know it. And you're too tired or too lazy to go after it and see what does this question mean or what does it want. So you come up with reasons and conclusions and things to convince yourself that this question will not. This one, no, he didn't talk about it. He's not done. It won't. I'm sure. Then the exam comes and voila, Murphy's law comes into place. And there goes the question that you didn't study. Now we can just, with the disappointment, draw a sad face, or write that your dog ate your homework, or you can just write scribbles explaining the other questions. Now that you kind of got a grasp of what does this law means and how it's connected, I will tell you about Edward Murphy. Now, Edward Murphy was a critical safety engineer in United States Aerospace in 1950s. Now, a critical safety engineer's job is to make sure nothing goes wrong and make sure there are no rooms for errors. Now, surprise, surprise, Edward Murphy came up with this idea or law that you should not let anything to chance. Now, they have to double check it, triple check it, quadruple check it to make sure there will be nothing that might result in catastrophic events or whatever that might kind of, other than get blames on you, you might even bear the guilt. Now I'll give you an example of how this being a critical safety engineer's kind of job is important. In 1986, a space shuttle called Challenger, it got exploded within 2 minutes from taking off from ground. Now, NASA, National Aeronautics Space Administration, gave a report explaining what would be the reasons or what would be the reasons. For example, the leakage of combustion gas or the change of diameters in the motors, which caused etc., why this explosion or catastrophe happened. But again, we can think about it. Okay, the engineers were wrong. They did a mistake. They were supposed to kind of make sure nothing happens. Then you can also read between the lines and blame the critical safety engineers. And they may also get blamed either by, even though the engineers are also to blame, but critical safety engineers are also there to make sure there won't be any mistakes. Now, because they didn't kind of follow Murphy's law, this catastrophe happened. Now they will carry the blame, they will carry the guilt, along with the engineers that actually did the mistake. Now, there is a book called The Secret, written by Rwanda Birdman. There is also a documentary made about this book. And I have personally read this book, and I can say this book is based on law of attraction. What's law of attraction? Law of attraction states that whatever you wish or whatever you want will come to you in one way or another. You feel like if you want something really bad, and or a good thing or a bad thing, if you focus on it or think about it, it will come to you. Now that means you have to change your attitude or feel different about what could happen or what would happen. But this law of attraction needs a whole time explaining. But I want you to understand its relation with Murphy's law. You could say that the law of attraction and Murphy's law are on two ends of an axis. But again, you could use Murphy's law as a good thing, which helps you kind of get your things onward. Now, also you can use law of attraction to bring the optimism in the human species, or just focus on the bad points and think about how Murphy's law will come into effect and ruin everything. You have to make sure not to use the Murphy's law incorrectly, because it will just cause obsessive behavior, making sure nothing goes wrong point by point. I'll give you an example of how you can use either Murphy's law to your benefit or to whatever you want to kind of achieve. Imagine you want to build a miniature project, building or whatever. Then you'll start thinking, planning ahead, okay, I'll do that, do this, then points coming. There are children running around, or it might rain, or other things that might happen which could ruin your project, or kind of ruin your kind of feeling toward. Then you remember that time that someone criticized your project and said, no, this is not good, then you fell down, like, okay, I won't do it. But then you can just use it as a rule. Okay, here are the problems. Now I think of solutions first. Either move somewhere else, there are not children, so they won't stop your project, or somewhere that kind of it won't, raining won't affect it, or just not caring about. Okay, see, you care what people criticize you. Now you can even work on why people criticize you, and just don't care about it or fix it, whatever you wish. Now, I'll give you some examples and modern interpretations of Murphy's law. Say you're driving in beloved Emirates Road with the traffic, and then you decide to change your lane, hoping that that lane is going faster, then surprise, it's going slower, the last lane is going faster, and this loop goes on, and you will feel Murphy coming up to you again. You can say the rate of people watching you is proportional to the stupidity of your act. This is one thing that I have experienced it firsthand. You can say also, whenever you have an oily or greasy hand, your nose starts to itch. And the probability of two people in a locker room having their lockers next to each other is a lot, based on Murphy. Now I will conclude my speech with stating again, whatever that can go wrong will go wrong is merely an interpretation of how you want to think about life, or whatever you want to achieve. Use it in good or bad. Either use it to build a bulletproof plant, or just stop doing everything and just put everything aside. Again, I'm just a messenger. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just here to tell you about this law. I have read a very interesting article about Google's self-driving cars. The article was written by Alexis Madrier. The topic of this article was that Google self-driving cars are smart, but can they beat Murphy's law or not? Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
He was a critical safety engineer. Say just he wasn't from 1945 to 1955. It was his job was to make sure nothing goes wrong, which surprisingly came up with this. Yes, sir.
So Murphy came with this philosophy or law.
Yes.
It says it's like saying no half measures, right? You have to make sure everything is
Yes.
on point. But maybe at some point, like you said, maybe he dedicates a lot of time to something that maybe it's not worth it.
Excuse me, I think it's your last.
Maybe he dedicates a lot of time to something
Yes.
that maybe it deserves less time than what he did.
You could say he came up with this because it was like a rule of thumb for him. Just doing because missing something and resulting in something catastrophic is nothing against you spending 5 more hours or 10 more hours working on something which could prevent that catastrophic events.
But there's no science behind this.
There is no-
it's
it's just-
interesting that it became a law.
Yes, exactly.
You know, when you say law, like Newton's law,
Okay.
you know, there are many laws that are based on science, but this one, like your speech, is not based on evidence.
What I said, Murphy's
Did
law.
you hear me?
Yes, I understand.
Like your speech
Yeah.
is not based on evidence. There are no sources in your speech.
Yes, true. Because the sources, I'm informing you of something.
Yes, but
It's-
if I want to believe you, and if I want to believe Murphy, I mean, at the end of the day, Murphy's law is an attitude. I can choose to believe it, I can choose not. It's a method of interpretation, it's how I live my life. It's a choice of interpretation, of hermeneutics, really, you're how reading the world around you. But if I want to be convinced of that, I want to understand some kind of logic behind it.
Okay, my presentation or my speech was based on a story. Something, a legend, or something that you know and you either use it or not. It might be true, it might be wrong. I'm informing you about this law. This law, which was Murphy's law, it's not a physics number uno law, it's just his law. Now I'm informing you. I know it's not, there's no kind of sources, because I felt, or what I thought was that it's something that I'm informing about and leaving it to you to decide whether it's...
Yeah, but we need sources. I mean, we need evidence, we need background, we need to understand who he was, what he was doing, why this happened, you know, interpretations today in film, in literature, in life. I mean, we need something that is more concrete, evidence, you know?
I will look more into it.
Well, now it's too late, but yes, please
For
do.
my own...
And then come and
yes.
tell us,
Sure.
seriously, because
Yes.
I think it would be interesting.
I-
All right, thank you.